People always ask me, they go, Trevor, how do you laugh when the news is sad? How do you find the jokes and everything? I tell people it's not that I find things funny, it's that my mind uses that as a tool to protect me from pain. And I always see that come up whenever there's instances that pop up in the news. And one of those instances was in Tulsa. There was a shooting, another shooting. A man by the name Terence Crutcher, an unarmed black man, right, was killed by the police. Now, this time, the man's car was stranded in the middle of the road. And the police say they pulled up, and they weren't there because they thought he was threatening or anything. They had a call, and they got there, and this man was there, and they said he refused to listen to their instructions. It's not really clear what happened. But what we do know is this. After the police released a statement, they then released a video, and that video doesn't look good.
Video from a police chopper shows 40-year-old Terence Crutcher walking toward his SUV, hands in the air, as officers surrounded him Friday night. It's difficult to see exactly what happened as Crutcher approached the driver's side window of his SUV, but police say he was not cooperating.
Okay, I don't get that, not cooperating. Because, I mean, it sure looks like cooperation. His hands are up, right? Unless the cop was like, put your hands in the air. And now wave them like you just don't care. And he was like, but I do care. Oh, you're not cooperating, you're not cooperating. We got a guy who cares over here. Like, look, don't get me wrong, it looks cut and dry to me, but the truth is, I wasn't there. None of us were there, none of us were there. We're never there in those situations. We don't know what happened before the video. We don't know what the cop expected when they got there. We don't know if the guy was on drugs or not on drugs. What we do know is this. It seems extremely easy to get shot by police in America, which is not right. No? And now, obviously, in a situation like this, when a white officer shoots a black person, the first accusation is racism. Right? And the police officer's first defense is, but what about all the black people I haven't shot?
Did him being a big black man play a role in her perceived danger?
No, him being a large man perceived a role in her being in danger. She's worked in this part of town for quite some time. And, you know, just the week before, she was at an all-black high school homecoming football game.
Oh, yeah. She was at a football game, yeah. You know what the truth is? I'm willing to accept that this police officer is not racist. But her lawyer's defense has introduced us to one of the bigger problems that you face in America. You know, because in an American city, there's an all-black high school, and that's normal instead of weird. You know, living in a society where racial divisions are so deeply baked into every part of society that we don't even notice it anymore. An all-black high school, that's a phrase which, by the way, is never followed by, oh, you're talking about the one in the nice part of town? Yeah, I know it. Racial divisions are so normalized in society that people possess a bias that they don't even realize they have. Just listen, like in the video of the policeman in the helicopter, listen to what he says about Terence Crutcher, right? Listen to him as he's flying over the scene.
This guy's still walking and following commands.
Not for taser, I think.
Got a feeling that's about to happen.
That looks like a bad dude, too.
I'm sorry, what does that mean? What exactly about that man looks bad to you from all the way up there in your helicopter? He's not holding a weapon. His hands are up. He doesn't even have a hoodie on. I mean, isn't that the international sign for bad dude? Yeah? You can't tell anything about this man from up in the helicopter except for one thing. He's black. That's the only thing you can tell. And you cannot deny we live in a world where people see a black man and they're more likely to think, oh, I might get robbed. That's what people think. It's implicit bias. Everyone has it. I'm even guilty of that. I walk down the street, and I won't lie to you, I've never seen a white man walking down the street and thought, damn, I hope this guy doesn't mug me. Yeah, I have crossed the street, though, because I'm like, oh, I better keep this dude away from my pension fund. You know, this banker-looking mother. I do cross the street. But you can't deny that there's a bias. And people going around on Twitter and people saying things in the news where they're like, oh, these black people need to calm down, why they're rioting, why they're saying this. Just ask yourself this question. If the only time you encounter black people is when they're policing crime, think about it. If the only time you encounter black people is when you're policing crime, then your only experience of black people is that they're criminals. That's your only experience of them. It's the same way As if the only time you see a Muslim man is when he's on the news for blowing something up. Then in your head, all Muslims are terrorists. But if you live in a city like New York, for instance, that's filled with Muslims, you see that guy on the news and then you bitch about terrorism to the guy who's making your kebab, who's also Muslim. You'd be like, oh, this terrorism is getting crazy here, babe. It's getting crazy. I know, Jeremy, these Sunnis, what are you going to do about it, huh? Then the truth is you can't fix racial bias overnight. You genuinely can't, all right? The one thing you can do is not think black people are crazy for feeling oppressed when every time they see a video of themselves being engaged by the police, it ends with them getting shot. An unarmed black man in Chicago, Paul O'Neill, stole a car, right? He stole a car, and the police chased him. In the ensuing chase, he crashed the stolen car into the police. He jumped out and he ran away. Now he's dead. Now, the whole thing was captured on police body cameras, but then it turns out not the whole thing.
The moments before the shooting and after caught on video. But not the shooting itself. A police source says the officer who fired that fatal shot turned on his camera after he fired. Police say what happened to that camera is being investigated.
The camera's got the whole thing, except the actual shooting. It's a little suspicious, right? Makes you ask the question, why are the police only sloppy with evidence against them? Oh. If I run a red light, they've got 3 camera angles and another with J.J. Abrams' commentary track. Like, why does this keep happening with body cam videos? These stories are always so tragic, but every time a new story comes out, I feel like it sheds a little light, and a new light on a different aspect of police violence. For instance, this story for me showed us that some of the people who may be in danger of being shot by the police are the police themselves.
While the department acted quickly in releasing the video, several officers appear to fire in the direction of each other and a police SUV while shooting at O'Neill.
God damn! Are you being like, what is this? What is this? What is this? That doesn't look like a professional police video. It looks like your dad trying to play Call of Duty. What is this? And what actually may have happened here is this is what some people are suggesting. They're saying some of the officers thought that shots were being fired at them. They thought the shots were coming from Paul O'Neill, when in fact Paul O'Neill was unarmed. And the only people who were shooting were actually police. And this is a problem that we discovered when watching this video. If you're a police officer and you hear shots going off all around you, how are you supposed to know who's shooting? It's impossible, right? So you shoot back, and then people are like, shooting, why are you shooting? Because they were shooting, but you were shooting. Oh yeah, but I heard shots, that's why I'm shooting. It's impossible. But I was thinking, maybe in addition to finding better body cameras, maybe what we need to do is we need to give police guns that make a special sound that only police guns make. You know? Yeah, think about it, sort of like we did with their cars. If you're driving in a car and you hear someone behind you, bop, 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 then you're like, oh, there's a civilian honking, so you know what you need to do. You need to tell them to f off, because I'm driving over here. I'm driving over here. What's wrong with you? New York has taught me well. But you know, if you're driving and then you hear, whoop, 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 then you go, oh, that's the police, and you pull over and then you throw the weed out the window, right? That's what you do. By the way, these are white people instructions. These are white people instructions. So surely if we can do that with sirens, we can change the sounds. It must be possible with technology for police guns to make a special sound. For instance, instead of bang, 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 maybe they could make them sound like ducks.
That's it. Put down the gun. Stop, police!
You see? You see? It's perfect. It's perfect. Then you know. Then the other police know. Oh, no, that's just us shooting. That's the other duck sounds. It's a perfect thing. Okay, I will admit, obviously there could be a problem if there happens to be like real ducks near a police shootout. Because if they hear like wah, 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 and then the next thing you know, the ducks are trying to mate with the cops, and then, like, this is the problem with police violence. It's so hard to solve. This is so if they made that work, like, that would solve the problem of police confusing their gunfire for bad guy gunfire. That's the one suggestion I can make. But let's go back to the issue of body cams that mysteriously seem to stop recording.
We also have questions about why an officer's camera went out. His body cam stopped recording during the moments when O'Neill was shot. The investigation is going to reveal whether that had something to do with an airbag deploying.
Yeah, that's the story. Investigators think it's at least possible that when O'Neill crashed into the police car, the police airbag went off and hit the driver in exactly the right spot to turn off his body camera, while doing no other apparent damage. Not damaging the camera, just turning it off. Yeah, that's what they're going with. We decided to investigate this claim, and so we asked our very own Ronnie Chang to test this theory. Look at that. Camera is still rolling. Thank you very much, Ronnie Chang. If you've been keeping up the news, you've probably seen the story coming out of Texas that's blown up. And it's been taking place for a while. It's been the trial of the police officer, Amber Geiger. Have you saw that? Right, the police officer who said she accidentally walked into a man's apartment in her building, and then she thought that he was the intruder, and she shot him dead. And I remember when the story happened, it was a wild story off the bat. It was, you know what I mean? Because it was already crazy. It's like you walked into a wrong apartment and you shot the person. What were you doing? What, you know? And so the trial has been going on. And the first thing that was a little weird for me was the judge allowed the defense to use what they call the castle doctrine in America. So they said they would allow the defense that she was protecting herself because she thought it was her house, which already was like weird to me, because I'm like the castle doctrine is like a very strict law in America, but I mean I get it fundamentally. If you're in your house, you can do whatever you need to protect yourself. But this was interesting where the judge was like, no, we allow the defense that you thought you were in your house, so you shot somebody in their house. And there I was just like, but it's not your house, because then you can just think you're in your house anywhere. Like it's. So already that was weird, and you know I was worried. I honestly was worried this was going to be another one of those cases in America where justice didn't get served, because it seemed like a fairly, you know, black and white, excuse the pun, case. And then the verdict was handed down and the jury did find her guilty. But what has followed since has been a really interesting story. And we actually have a clip. It's a really complicated story, but this is basically what went down.
The white former Dallas police officer convicted of murdering her black neighbor has learned her fate. Yesterday, Amber Geiger was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the murder of Botham Jean. But it was what Jean's brother did after the sentencing that brought the court to a standstill.
Can I give her a hug, please?
18-year-old Brant Jean forgave Amber Geiger, who'd just been sentenced to 10 years in prison for killing his older brother Botham. At the end of the hearing, Judge Tammy Kemp gave a Bible to Geiger and embraced her as well.
Amber Geiger will be eligible for parole in 5 years.
No justice, no peace!
Some outside the courtroom thought the sentence was too lenient.
So that's basically the story as it stands. And it's interesting because I sat with this story and I talked to my friends about it, and it's so funny how many complicated feelings there are in and around it. First and foremost, 1,000 kudos, and just like, honestly, I admire the compassion of the Jean family. At the same time, though, I understood why so many people were angered by that moment, because this thing has really, blown up online. People saying like they were angry that she was getting hugs from the judge, and they were angry that she was getting hugs from the family. And some people, a lot of people are fighting about this right now, because they're like, why were they hugging her? She murdered a man, why is she getting hugs? And the other side is like, yes, but they're forgiving her. She still goes to jail, but it's about forgiveness. And I sat with it, and I have conflicting feelings, but I think I understand what is happening, in so many different ways with how people are looking at the story. On the one hand, you can't deny that people feel like 10 years, 5 actually is not a lot of time to be given for taking another human being's life, especially if you're found guilty of murder. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's people in jail in America for doing far lesser crimes, whether they've been, charged with like drug trafficking, where they just had a certain amount of drugs and they were assumed to be drug traffickers, or, people where they said it was violent crimes and it was assault, but they're spending more time in jail. And then this seems like another case of the system preferring a certain type of person who looks a certain type of way, who fits a certain type of narrative. 10 years, 5 years. I get why people are angry. I get why people also like, this is another case of like white women tears doing their magic, you know? Because like that's, I mean, you know the myth is like white women tears, just like anything. Like traffic stops, anything. White woman cries and people are like, all right, yeah. Yeah, and it's true. Like, it's a joke, but it's also true at the same time. It's like white women throughout history have been very good at like stepping away from like the thing just with their tears. You know, it'll be like, everyone looks at the Klan, everyone forgets that there's like wives of the Klan. Do you know what I mean? People are like, those Klan, and then like the wives can sometimes be like, oh, I didn't know my husband. It's like, but you helped him put the sheet on every night. Oh, I thought he just liked Halloween, I'm sorry. And that's what a lot of people feel like in these instances. They feel like those white tears are really felt, whereas the tears of many other people of different races, people of, you know, other genders aren't felt as much. And I think, you know, that like all of it stems from the conversations in and around race in America. You can't avoid it. People are looking at a story of a white woman who shot a black man in his house who did nothing. He was just in his house. And people were angry, and I understand why so many people are angry. Because they're like, she doesn't deserve hugs. She deserves to lose her life the way she took a life. And I'm not speaking for everybody. I know maybe I'm speaking for myself and some of my friends, but I feel like the anger actually comes from people feeling like that is the level of empathy everybody should receive in a court. You know? Everybody should have a judge look at them like a human being. Everybody in society should be treated with a level of compassion. They should still be punished if they've committed a crime, but we should still look at them as human beings. And yet, this narrative doesn't seem to be afforded to black people in America, especially by the news. Because if you look at all the news stories about this, they do paint it like they go, it's a beautiful moment where she's hugged by everyone. And so, but it's like they don't use that same editorial when a young black child is going to jail. You know, they don't go, this young black man who was recruited into a gang and had no other choices, look at this they just go like he was sentenced and he was found guilty and that's the story. As if that is what's expected. You know what I mean? It almost feels like if you're a black person who commits a crime and goes to jail, well, that's what black people do. But if you're a white person who commits a crime and goes to jail, it's like, oh man, what a disaster story. They tell you about the human being behind the act. This story showed you the exact opposite example. This young black man who's doing his own thing, he got shot. They told you that he had a history with weed. The news told you that. Why? They always tell you that this man was shot in a traffic stop. Now, he did have an assault case 10 years ago. What does that have to do with this traffic stop? You know what I mean? What was the cop traveling through time to punishing him? What is that? And I think that's what people need to understand, is that like some of the narratives that we tell and share about what's happening in the world are so much more powerful than we actually think they are. You think it's just on the surface, but what a lot of people are seeing here is a reinforcing of an idea. But I think the mistake we shouldn't make as people is that we shouldn't necessarily jump to, we want people like Amber Geiger to spend more time in jail and the most time in jail. I think what we should be asking is for the same level of compassion and saying, hey, I don't want anyone to spend excessive amounts of time in jail. And so the same way a white shooter is disarmed peacefully, the same way a white murderer can get a hug in a courtroom and sympathy, the same way a young shooter is spoken about as a human being because he is white, you would hope that same level of compassion and empathy would be applied to black people. That's all it is. There was a shooting at a mall in Alabama where 2 people were shot, right? I think one died and one was severely injured. And the police came in, and then they said that they shot the gunman before anyone else could get hurt, right? At least that was the first report that came out, and then this is what came out afterwards.
Police in Alabama admit they made a mistake after officers shot and killed a man they thought opened fire at a mall on Black Friday.
Police killed 21-year-old Emantic Bradford after they say he was seen fleeing the scene and brandishing a weapon. But now police in Hoover say they may have killed the wrong person and the shooter may still be at large.
His father, Emantic Bradford Sr., is a police officer himself.
I know my son always respected the police. And if you gave a command when you came around that corner, say freeze, drop your weapon, he'd comply with your order.
So the question I ask myself is like, how does this shit keep happening, right? Cops are called into a situation. They see a black person, and then immediately they shoot. Right? That's what they did here. They ran in, they shot the guy, and then they were like, we got him. And what's wild about the story for me is, even if we work within a world where the police truly believe he was the shooter, how many times have we seen a shooter who is white and a man get talked down? You know what I mean? Like the shooting that happened in Aurora, the Batman movie, guy went in with an arsenal. I mean, he didn't just have one gun. The police talked him down. They didn't kill him. Right? The shooting in Charleston, kid who went into the church, shot the congregation of black people. The police talked him down. They didn't kill him. In fact, a lot of the killers who did die killed themselves when you look at American mass shootings, right? You look at Vegas, the person shot themselves. You look at Thousand Oaks, the person killed themselves. But in every, like, there's so many instances where we've seen the police talk the person up, but then when it's a black guy, they go like, black guy, mass shooter, shoot immediately, ask questions later. And there were so many things that bugged me about this story because, by the looks of it, it sounds like this guy was a good guy with a gun. That's what, like they always say, right? The good guy with a gun stops the crime. But then if the good guy with the gun happens to be a black good guy with a gun, they don't get any of the benefits. And what blows my mind is that there's no profiling. Police profile all the time. Driving through New York, they'd be like, you, black guy, search you. You look like you're selling drugs, you. But then in the mall, why don't they do profiling there? Black guy, probably not you. Skinny white guy with the trench coat, get against the wall. And what was crazy about the story is that you read it and you find out that multiple people had guns out because it's Alabama. A lot of people heard gunshots, they pulled out their guns, but then the only person who's shot by the police is a black guy. And then afterwards, they're like, yeah, we made a mistake. And what was funny was the initial statement was, we got the guy, we're proud. We got him, the police got him. And then afterwards, when the story came out, they're like, you guys said you got him, right? They're like, no, well, we didn't get him. What happened was he was involved in a police shooting that may have involved him. It's like, wait, you said you said you shot. They're like, no, well, we didn't shoot, there was a shooting, and it happened to involve us as police. At this point, you start to realize that really the Second Amendment is not intended for black people. It's an uncomfortable thing to say, but it's the truth. Like, people will be like, the right to bear arms. Yes, the right to bear arms if you are not a black man. If you're a black man, you have no business bearing arms at all. This is not the first time this happened. There was that uniformed security guard about a month and a half ago. Same thing happened. He was stopping a criminal. The police shot up and shot him. He's in uniform. What else do you want the black person? Because here you can be like, oh, maybe they did, but this guy was in uniform. So they've shown, you know what I mean? Like, it's going to get to the point where black cops should warn their partners before they go into a crime scene. They should be like, hey, Dave, it's me. When we get in there, it's me, all right? Look at me. I'm the guy with the gun. All right, I'm your partner. He's like, cool, I got it. All right, let's get in there. Gun! No, it's me. Thank God they didn't have a black mall Santa, because I always say that. I go like, they should have more black mall. They would have shot that guy if there was a black Santa in that mall. They would be like, and that guy's kidnapping white babies. Shit has gotten so crazy in America. I bet like even superheroes, like Black Panther, the next one, he's not going to do anything in America. The next Black Panther, they're going to be like, T'Challa, are you helping America? He'll be like, I've seen what happens on CNN. I think, where's Ant-Man? Maybe he can help them. If you're black and you're a man in America, gun rights are not for you. If you're a black person in America, gun rights are not for you. It's as simple as that. In fact, the safest way to sell a black person a gun in America, they should say, is when you buy a gun, you should buy a white person with it, and they hold the gun for you. Yeah, you should be like, what would you like? I'd like a Glock and a Craig. That's what I would like, please. And you're like, all right, Craig, you roll with the Glock, and then whenever you want to shoot, if you do get in trouble, you'd be like, what did you say? I'm gonna shoot you, Craig. Do the thing, Craig. I'm not touching that gun, because I know how it's gonna end. It's some bullshit, but it's the truth. Second Amendment was not made for black folks.